I sure hope that like the video does mention just that digital games alone comprising a massive portion now, like particularly sizable compared to 10 years ago, and
To the point
obviously
where
basically like non-existent.
Well, there's
we depressingly
there's
don't even
two
get
big.
the you don't even get discs with a lot of physical purchases now.
That's
Yeah,
getting to the point. And
we've
now
mostly
you've got
been-
some games that actually don't even have a physical release. Like I think Alan Wake 2 was digital only.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Hellblade is that's coming out in a few days, guys. In case you didn't realize, that's digital only as well.
Is
Though
that-
I think they're charging $10 less for that one. So that's
Is that another Epic release? Epic Games releases have like no launch hype at
Alan
all.
Wake
It
2
seems.
was, yeah, but the point
Hellblade
being
is
that
Microsoft.
Okay.
Hellblade is, but Alan Wake 2 is Epic.
I'm sure they'll fire the devs in no time.
Though, just think about the kind of profit margins that you're getting if you're selling a game digitally compared to manufacturing,
no packaging,
middleman,
no
like you're not having to sell it
distribution.
through GameStop or Walmart or any of these companies. Like all of that was a like cost factor that gets tethered into the amount of money that a game is going to make if you sell it physically versus digitally.
Also, a huge factor is on demand as well, because like before they'd have to print like 100,000 copies, and not all of them might sell at first. Whereas digital, you make as much money as they sell. Yeah.
So that already is like a huge factor.
He's going to go over some of these
games cost.
elements, but I don't even know if you'll get all of them, because the amount of different ways that games have lost value and simultaneously like creeped up in cost has been kind of insane and insidious. And all of us are perfectly poised to talk about it because we've been aware of it, probably autistically more so than most average people have, thanks to hating it for the past decade.
Something I'm I suppose curious about is how much of the conversation is going to be about post-launch revenue models that now exist very prevalently across a variety of games, whether that be just like like paying for DLC or battle passes, microtransactions, loot boxes, how much of that is going to be factored into the way that, and then of course just fundamentally, if people don't want to pay an amount of money for a game, like that's it, right? Like like you can't, like if you tell somebody, hey, do you know about inflation? They said, yeah, I still don't want to pay $70 for a video game. Like, there's not really an argument against that. If somebody doesn't want to pay that much, they don't want to pay that much. Plain and simple.
Like at some point, there's just, it doesn't matter the quality of the game. The price just gets too high. Like imagine a game that is $1,000, but it's actually worth $1,000. Like it's just that good. You're still going to be like, yeah, but I don't want to spend $1,000 on it.
Yeah, right. I'd rather pay for a whole bunch of $30, $40, $50 games that are worth it. It's. There's the big things here are, of course, digital distribution should lower significantly the price of physical distribution and packaging and all that sort of stuff. And also, nowadays, especially as compared to back then, the pool of people who are buying games is significantly larger. So it's not like you're physically having it; you're just selling to way more people now.
I sure hope that the argument isn't just inflation occurred, but the games cost about the same in terms of a dollar amount.
With gaming history, it's going to be our job to see if there's any holes in his story.
Ooh, right.
Remember, they did research for like a whole night, so...
That's true, they did.
He looks like such a...
It just feels weird that we're kind of old enough now to be like, I lived through these changes, boy. I know everything about them.
You used to have to attach a light bulb to the top of your Game Boy to see it in the dark.
Well, like, isn't Dead Space 3 like an incredibly important game in the history of monetization for
our lives?
Absolutely.
Oh boy,
it's
was
so
it
interesting how important Dead Space 3 was. Really,
I'm going to be honest. I don't know the Dead Space 3 story. What's the deal?
Oh, basically, Dead Space 3 was like the first example of a major AAA video game, point of sale, $60, that had microtransactions in it as a single player game.
To be specific, it's so almost interesting how it starts, because it's exactly how you'd want to start it. It's like, hey, you have to use scrap to construct different kinds of ammo and weapons in the game. It's like a baseline scrap you can collect, and then it's like,
they changed to like a universal ammo
system. Fucking universal ammo. So it's like, oh, you need some scrap to make your thing. Oh yeah, you can collect it around the game. You can work real hard to find it in secret places. Or, I mean, hey, toss us $1 and we'll give you like 10 scrap. You're like, what?
Yeah, and that was directly integrated with the upgrade or weapon building terminals. It wasn't just like this entirely separate menu where it's like a store page. It was just like it was part of the game in an unsettling way.
Really, that was very much a case of a lot of companies starting to experiment with ways of essentially just making more money, right? Because the online passes, that was around that. Do you guys remember the online passes where like you had to buy the game new in order to get the online access?
Fringy, you might want to tell everyone about what happened in 2013 and something that Microsoft still hasn't recovered from.
Oh, yes, of course. The Xbox One reveal event, which to this day Microsoft has not recovered their reputation from that. That was 2013. That was
madness.
So for everyone who wasn't there, because we're talking like that was
we're at the old folks' home. We're sharing stories.
Oh, all right, children, gather round. Old Rags just killing stories again. You see. What were we talking about?
2013?
Did Fringy say a Simpsons joke?
Oh, so yeah, Xbox One, right? Like, so man, I'm just trying to make sure that I get everything. So it costs more money than the PlayStation 4. It had to have the Kinect. It had to be online, always online.
Fringy, what's the Kinect?
Oh man. Oh yeah, Kinect. That was a fun era as well.
You never played Kinectimals?
Remember Milo?
I do. Yeah.
That was the presentation where they said TV more than the word games.
Yes, because they were talking about how you could watch like NFL on Xbox, which is what all the nerds who are watching these sorts of events want to hear about is the NFL.
Yep. Yeah. So Microsoft got it into their heads that after the Xbox 360, the next Xbox, the Xbox One, terrible fucking name.
Xbode.
But it was named that way because it needed to be like an all-in-one entertainment. It was your video games, it was your music, it was your TV,
your sports.
It was everything. Which is like, okay, like, go on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they kind of got themselves into a hole with 360 because 360 was already the panorama. That was the 360 degrees. So they shouldn't have gone 360 because how you follow that up. But anyway, go on.
720.
So what Microsoft did was
like there were no possibilities.
Oh, they could have had a way better name than Xbox One.
No, I mean, I think Xbox One was stupid, but I'm saying that they kind of screwed themselves a little bit. They kind of screwed themselves a little bit by doing 360.
There's so many options.
I thought they were going to do like Xbox Infinity because 720.
Yeah, that'd be better.
You know, 2 full revolutions. That's kind of looks like an Infinity logo.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Logo. Symbol.
But the Xbox One was supposed to be your everything, your whole entertainment built into one. But the way that this manifested was like Nightmare Realm. Because for starters, it was always online. It had to be online. It would not work without an internet connection.
And it would check in on you. You had to check in every like day or two, otherwise it'll lock you out of your library.
So for some of y'all young whippersnappers listening to this now, that might sound not as crazy and weird, but back in 2013, when your gaming world was like a PlayStation 3, a Nintendo Wii, an Xbox 360, and it was just this game that played discs, the idea of a console, not a computer, PC, but a console that had to be, not optional, mandatory, had to have a network connection in order to play games, that required like daily checks in order to verify that you were allowed essentially to play these games. That was nuts at the time, and it caused like I think it was probably the biggest controversy of the decade, the Xbox One launch.
Oh, definitely one of them.
But there's more.
There was a serious misunderstanding of like there was a lot of cave gamers still, people who did not do online and were like a generation behind, and were just like, this is my box for playing my video games, which had been the case for many people for a very long time.
Well, that was just the state of gaming. Was you had a box, you put a CD into the tray, you closed it, and you played the game, and that was that. And if you had an internet connection, which a lot of people had, but a lot of people didn't bother with that shit, then you could do extra stuff. You had little Xbox Live marketplaces. You had the Xbox Live itself. You could do internet stuff, but it wasn't necessary.
Well, there's a lot of people just weren't interested. It's like, I don't want internet on my console anyway. I'm fine.
I just want a box that plays games.
And then, of course, there's the fact that there was a lot of shit internet too back then. Mine included. It was horrible back then.
yeah, and then not to mention military folks who didn't have access to internet while they're on, while they're out of the country or whatever. They got completely screwed. Not to mention that they also, this was the thing that PlayStation actually quickly drew up an ad to counter it. On top of the always online connection, you're basically going to claim a game once to your Xbox. That was something that they also reneged on. But that was going to be
probably the best way to explain it would be that used games would not be a thing anymore. On the Xbox One, you bought a license for a game, which on consoles, again at the time, that was unheard of. The idea that you wouldn't really be buying a disc so much as you would be buying permission to play a disc that you bought. You couldn't buy a game and then give it to your friend to play. That was just not a thing. It couldn't be done anymore. You couldn't.
Yeah.
The whole used game market for the Xbox was basically about to be destroyed.
And the GameStop had made
discussion, but at the time that was like a huge. That's unheard of. That was unbelievable at the time.
You could argue that GameStop's entire business model was kind of predicated on that at one point. So they were kind of like, guys, what's happening? Because they were reselling copies like by the millions essentially. I used
that was
to
like
do
their
that a lot.
whole business.
Yeah. So they were like about to get a huge hit to that, but also just I think they were going to have some sort of game sharing thing, but it was going to be really backwards and weird. But a certain subsect would not be able to play their games at all because they didn't have a constant internet connection. Plus, the games were buy once, play it, and you can't sell the disc. The disc is basically plastic at that point. You can't actually use it.
Oh, but that's not all. You see, all of that sounds terrible and is shit that gets heads and pikes. But it was worse because one of the primary reasons why the Xbox One was going to be so expensive is because it had the Kinect as part of it. It wasn't an optional additional thing. Microsoft said, and this was a lie. Just for clear, this was.
No, yeah, they said it was impossible to take apart from the console, and it was a lie. They just flipped the switch.
Microsoft said that the Xbox One and the Kinect were designed to be together, that they couldn't be apart, that the one, by the very nature of how it's designed, was supposed to be with the Kinect, and that it couldn't function without it. And the Kinect was basically like a little eye tracker motion sensor kind of thing. And you could do some games or whatever stuff with it. It was a thing that people didn't want. People didn't want the Kinect. The Kinect didn't sell. Kinect games didn't sell. But for whatever reason, I forget who was in charge of Microsoft at the time.
Don Matrick.
Yeah, that was it. He was really, really insistent that the Kinect be a part of the Xbox system. Eventually, they just decided that, actually, no, the Xbox works just fine without the Kinect, and they stopped bundling the Kinect with it. The Kinect was totally optional. And then, of course, like an old person being disconnected from life support, the Kinect just died. Because people didn't want the Kinect. People didn't want that shit. All right? It was annoying, and there was a Wii. People didn't want that. Xbox gamers didn't want the Kinect. So the Kinect died.
Ain't it crazy that they had all this like crazy new ideas to do all these different shit, and it's just like, had you just announced a fucking console and a bunch of games, you would have been fine. We'd be fine right now.
And PlayStation did that.
You and your ego.
Yeah.
Also, thing to think about is that at the time, PlayStation, it took a little while for them to build up a library on the PlayStation 4 of exclusive games. So, like, there was an opportunity there for Microsoft to be like, hey, we have more games to show off. But, like, the message got set so terribly early on that, like, we're not the gaming... basically, like, PlayStation firmly established we are the game, company with PlayStation. We want to make games. We want to sell you games. That's our only interest. That's the only point of the system. And that resonated with people. So even though Xbox, I remember at E3, they were like, games, it's all about games here. Games. And they had plenty of games, but it's like, it's too late. Like, everybody's thinking about the Kinect. And
how you tried to screw them over. It was always online. It was the Kinect.
That was the Milo presentation, right? With the creepy little kid.
No, that was like 20. That was earlier. That was Xbox 360.
Oh yeah, that was for the original Kinect for the 360. I think.
Remember, it was E3 2010, that was the one that Microsoft spent pretty much exclusively on Kinect.
Yeah, because I remember being connected to Kinect, and I just remember it, like, nobody liked it at all, and it was just an idea that disappeared. The creepy little child that you speak to.
One, right?
Yeah, Peter Molyneux. Yeah, it was actually. I actually know a lot about that. I researched quite a bit about that. Unfortunately, Peter Molyneux all night. Yeah, at least 10 minutes. Peter Molyneux is actually like definitely to blame for that, but also they got kind of screwed. Apparently, back when it was called Project Natal, they were giving dev kits and not to be confused with dev in chat, but like dev kits. And apparently they kept on lowering the specs on the Kinect until they released. So basically what released was like a dumbed down, worsened version of the original hardware for cost and price and whatever reasons. So what they could do with the initial kit was not really what they could do with the final kit. And so something like Milo wasn't really possible anymore. And you could even see that with like the live demos of like my favorite Kinect video in the world. I'll have to find it sometime. Is this guy on stage saying like, "Hey, you ever want to see what the bottom of your shoe looks like on your avatar? Well, bam, there it is." And then
it goes backwards.
his whole body like contorts with like some sort of like Dead Space monster, like you know.
Like a really bad idea. I remember it was the thing that they said was like, oh, for too many people, the controller is a barrier to playing video games. It was all this weird shit because everybody wanted what Nintendo had with the Wii. Because I remember PlayStation had the PlayStation Move, but they didn't tie up so much of their time and investment and their future of their brand in that.
Yeah, it was definitely like Microsoft dug too greedily and too deeply, and
I think so. It's kind of like it's a recurring story throughout the video game industry is that there seems to be that every time that a console manufacturer, like one of those companies, becomes dominant, they make some big mistake, mainly born out of some kind of arrogance that creates big problems for them. So, like, you know, in a sense, Nintendo kind of created PlayStation. And PlayStation 2 was the best-selling console of all time, which led to the PlayStation 3. That ended up, when it came out, costing too much money, not enough games. Xbox 360 was already out with its own problems, like Red Ring.
I believe it was also a really big bitch to develop for that thing, too.
Yes, the cell processor was notoriously difficult to develop for. And really, all of that stemmed from We're the Top Dog, which they had reason to believe they'd sold 5 times as many consoles as any of their nearest competitors. And
not only did they sell so much, but they basically were, you want to play online games, you're buying an Xbox for Xbox Live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by the way, they charged for it. Xbox Live was a monthly subscription back then, and the PlayStation equivalent was free, but Xbox Live was just better.
It was better.
Like PlayStation 3 didn't even have cross-game chat.
Oh, I remember that.
You couldn't chat with people. Yeah, it's because the memory. The PlayStation 3 just didn't have the memory necessary to do that sort of thing. And Xbox Live, it just had a better infrastructure behind the online services. So,
but the thing is that all of that, I guess what's interesting is that I think that the cycle continued with Xbox 360 into Xbox One, but they didn't really have that much cause to be arrogant. By the end of that generation, PlayStation 3 had overtaken the sales of the Xbox. Xbox was super successful in America, but PlayStation was more successful worldwide. So, like, they came into the Xbox One arrogant when they hadn't dominated like PlayStation did with the PS2, or like Nintendo had done basically for the prior decade before the PlayStation came out. And now they're still recovering from it. Like, Xbox still has a reputation problem that stems essentially from that Xbox One reveal event. They've really not recovered.
Yeah, the 360 had a really good start. It had like Mass Effect, Gears of War, like very early on. Bioshock, stuff like that. Yeah, and even up Elder Scrolls Oblivion, they had that I think in 2005, 2006.
The 360 had a great library of all sorts of games.
Starting out, they had a fantastic library, but toward the end, I don't think there was even like an exclusive release in 2013, if I recall correctly. Not a big one at least, but like. It was like one of the worst Gears of Wars, but
we play as Bed, right, or something like that.
Yeah, but like PS3 launched The Last of Us in 2013. Like they had some great like exclusives at the time. You know, great exclusives toward the end of their run.
God of War 3.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you're right about. I think you're right about these cycles, Fringy, because also at the same time, you know, in between. At some, I think was it the middle of the PlayStation 3's life when there was the big data leak, and Sony had to like publicly apologize. It's like, I'm sorry, like we f***ed up, and then like they kind of humbled themselves for a bit, and then they were an okay company, and then like by the end of the PS4 era, they had returned to their shitty ways.
Yeah, I think PlayStation's starting to get to the end of that cycle now as well. That they've gotten a bit like to the place of we can spend like $300 million on a single player game with no You know, like, and then release that, and then we'll be good, right? And it's like, oh shit, you might not be so good actually. Like that, you might be getting a bit complacent with this model.
I think what pissed everyone off the most about all of this is there was some game journalist who asked someone at Microsoft, well, what does the person who doesn't have an internet connection do? And the guy said, play a 360.
Play
Yeah.
No, the thing is that you got
the ultimate
to bake it in the corporate speak, because that was Don Matrick, and he
Yeah,
we have
phrased
a
it-
platform. We have a platform for people who don't want to use the online connection. It's called Xbox 360. That's what.
Yeah,
Don't you
Yeah.
guys have phones?
They were thinking
Yeah.
that they would essentially be like, yeah, if you don't have internet, then we're going to continue to sell Xbox 360s to people who didn't have an internet connection.
It could not be over.
It's just like,
So
no,
instead
man,
of
there's
moving
Wii's,
the
there's
generation
PlayStations,
forward,
like...
well, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
instead of moving the console generation of his company forward, it was like, well, some of you are going to be on the Xbox One, and some of
As
you are
people
just
in
going to
chat
be
are
buying
pointing out, though,
360s.
This was the early version of do you not have phones? This
Oh, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
taken the exact same way on the internet, yeah.
It's
It
the
could not
same
be-
attitude of, capitulate,
I remember-
essentially, accept the landscape that we're presenting to you. Don't push back against it at all.
And
Yeah, it cannot be overstated
I don't
how
know.
bad Don Matrick ruined the reputation of Xbox.
Oh, yeah.
Another one of his choice quotes was, "If you're backwards compatible, you're really backwards." Like he was just like digging the grave of that company so much.
Yeah.
He quit-
And
I think he left
well,
like a year after.
That's kind of crazy because they ended up doing that Xbox One backwards compatibility program that was
It
actually
was
really
great.
good.
It was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you could play
They still have it on the Series X,
Morrowind.
and yeah.
Yeah, you could play Morrowind in 4K now. It's awesome. Like they have better backwards compatibility than Sony does.
PlayStation has to
Mhm.
offer. Yeah,
it is. It's probably like one of the biggest gaming like controversies, like fumbles of probably the entire history of
I think
gaming.
that it definitely eclipses, because everybody talk, Ridge Racer, like E3.
$599 US.
Everybody talks about that, but really, PlayStation recovered, and it didn't even take. It took them like 4 or 5 years, and they were already starting to get close to eclipsing Xbox 360. Meanwhile,
Xbox
One
One,
for them.
they went back on everything. Everything they went back on. Used games, we can't take those away. It's too integral a part of an industry. And when we have our big competitor who's openly, brazenly telling everyone, oh yeah, used games are totally fine, just like normal. You can just give it to them. Boom, it's going to be great. Like, well, now we have to have used games, or else we'll get slaughtered. We got to get rid of the Kinect, so the Kinect went away.
Yep.
The always online thing that went away. Everything that they tried to do, they walked back on, and and they've been crippled ever since. It's been 11 years, and I don't think they've ever been able to make up from that huge loss of momentum that they had with the Xbox 360.
So the thing is, I've kind of been watching all of I'm sure we all have, but I've been watching all of the conferences that come out, like Nintendo Directs and the Inside Xboxes and whatever, right? Since that moment, pretty much every single Xbox online stream where they show off the upcoming games, there's no bullshit in them. It's just like, okay, here's the trailers, here's the games, they're coming out. And there's none of that bullshit. It's been like that for years.
Microsoft's a weird company when it comes to like video games. They're an odd duck with the naming conventions. With
Hellblade is coming out in like 4 days, and there's no marketing for it whatsoever.
There was marketing for it like 7 years ago when it was first announced, and then I haven't heard anything from it since.
It's coming out next week, and I feel like there's no marketing, no buzz for it whatsoever. And it's like, Microsoft, you don't have anything else like coming out for months. What's going on?
I
was not even aware that it's going to be out in just a week. Wow.
Come out a week,
They had to be reminded to market
it,
and they made a tweet, and that was it.
They made a tweet.
No, like legitimately, this was after the Tango GameWorks thing. Someone was like, "Hey," they added Microsoft. "Hey, you should probably market Hellblade," and so they like just tweeted a picture of it.
Yeah,
that's the marketing so far.
You got a bit of graphics now.
Yeah, tweets are expensive though.
I guess what I mean, it seems like Microsoft on some level has learned their lesson, because whenever they do a stream or a conference, it's like no bullshit, no sports, none of this nonsense. Just here's a bunch of games. They'll come out, enjoy them every single time. It's like, okay, well, you've learned your lesson. And the backwards compatibility on the Series X is really good. I actually bought one because I have a bunch of
Game Pass is amazing.
Yeah, Game Pass is great too. Yeah, but I mean, I bought a Series X solely because I have a shit ton of old Xbox and Xbox 360 games, and I mean, my 360 is not going to last forever, right? So I bought this thing, and they're all backwards compatible. It's like, oh, I can just play all my old stuff on this console. That's great. You know, it's actually a pretty good device they've built here, and like a good ecosystem, and like no one cares about Xbox anymore.
There was a
like,
weird
all the brand loyalty is gone.
You gotta have. Well, it's because Halo's been driven into the dirt, so you can't have Halo anymore. And that shit used to be like a titan in video games.
Yep.
Not to mention, there's really no reason to have an Xbox. Just most of the games just go right to PC as well.
If you want the simplicity and convenience, I guess, of a console, you can. But apart from that, it's like there's no reason to have it.
Yeah, that is why I bought it. Right,
Sony stuff.
Are you about to say more?
I've got a.
We had a hiccup at one point for backwards compatibility. I think they were trying to get rid of it overall, but like the value of it is fucking insane. Because even the PS5, right? Because in the PS3, the initial versions came out with backwards compatibility for PS2, but then the later versions stopped it. And
the fat PS2s.
Man, like so many people were like, "No, what the fuck have you done?" And then I remember PS4 being a really awkward era for backwards compatibility, but PS5, like every PS4 game is passable on it. It's just like, if you can maintain it, good God, it feels like such a good buy if you can use all your old games.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I did though, right? Because I have this giant collection of, it's got to be like 300 games at this point of old Xbox and 360 games, for both the original Xbox and for 360, and almost all of them work on my Series X. And it's like, well, I can just have this now in my living room instead of, and it all works. Like, I didn't buy it for new games. I bought it for that purpose, to be like an old gaming machine, and it works really well in that slot.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy that out of all of the different console devs, the Xbox actually can play 4 different generations of games, which is crazy considering that the PS3 was the last one. The first version of the PS3 could play PS1 and PS2. And then the second version, which looked exactly the same, they took away the PS2 emulation board or whatever it was. That's actually part of the reason why it was so expensive, because they had to add extra hardware to play PS2 games. And then when they did the PS3 Slim, they took away all backwards compatibility. So actually, I bought the second version, which could still play PS1 games, weirdly enough, but not PS2 games. But yeah, it's really a kind of a lost art. And I know it's difficult, especially when they went with a whole new architecture with the cell architecture, which is completely different. But it's such a lost art too, and even Nintendo has kind of lost that too, because they, on the Wii and the Wii U, which was backwards compatible with the Wii, there was a time where you could actually play Wii U and GameCube games on the same console, and you had almost all the good games on the virtual console online.
And then they shut all that shit down.
And they shut it all down.
I will say, I think Nintendo is more defensible because the platforms are like different formats pretty frequently. You know, how is the N64 to the GameCube, right? That's not going to be backwards compatible unless I guess you added an extra cartridge reader on it, and then like the Switch can't read discs.
I also feel like Nintendo just has better consistent favor with the audiences than the other companies. It
shouldn't even surprise anybody. They consistently release great games. Meanwhile, Sony and Xbox just fundamentally are less reliable when it comes to the quality of the games and the breadth of the experience.
I will say that the Nintendo has like a sort of shield, though. Like when they release physical DLC, nobody gives a shit, even though like they release.
Oh yeah, Nintendo gets away with.
That's what I'm kind of saying, though. The reason why they get away with it a little bit more, I think, is because they have just so much better favor. People are like, yeah, but then Nintendo, they make games I love. It's like it's surprising how far that can go.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of highlighted here, right? You're pointing out all of these things that Microsoft has done over the last decade, which is true. I remember there have been times when PlayStation have gone up on stage to talk about television and film adaptations of their projects. Meanwhile, Microsoft will never do that at any of these gaming events anymore. There's a whole, and of course backwards compatibility, and yet a lot of this just hasn't like earned them what they were probably hoping for, which is that it would earn them favor again. And I imagine part of it is just tethered to that, like, people don't have a strong association with Xbox and like a set of games that you can only play on Xbox that are really exciting and interesting to people. That's the kind of thing
they need a better game list. They need better IPs and franchises.
Well, they need to let people know about what they have to offer, you know, and like more coherently, because they definitely have games that, you know, PlayStation, in a certain sense, you could say that there's a level of homogeneity to the types of games that they tend to release that are like their big heavy hitters, right? They tend to be third-person, single-player action-adventure games, heavily cinematic. Meanwhile, like, Xbox doesn't have that level of, you know, there's like racing games, third-person shooters, first-person shooters, strategy games. That said, there's more variety, but like people aren't really aware of it.
Yeah, the kind of leaders of the Xbox thing with like, you had Fable, you had Gears of War, you had Halo, obviously, you had even Mass Effect was an exclusive at one point. Like those are all gone. They're all like left or become multiplat, or just they've taken the IP and extracted it from the original devs in terms of Bungie and Gears of War even. So it's like you don't really have those. They're like, oh, I got to get the next Gears game. Oh, I got to get the next Halo game. It's not really the case anymore.
Microsoft needs to get their shit together when it comes with like development studios and making good games. They need to figure out what they're going to be doing over there, because the reason they could do all this stuff is because Microsoft is way bigger than Sony and is not even close. Microsoft is like an insanely big company, so they can float this shit and they can make mistakes and they could do weird stuff and they can have mixed signals and they can just get away with it because Microsoft as a company is so much bigger than Microsoft, the games division of it.
The gaming department of Microsoft is a sliver of what they offer. I mean, they govern Windows. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, but Nintendo can't fuck around. Sony can't fuck around because their gaming elements are huge as a portion of what that company exists as.
Yeah, several years ago, Sony shut down. Sorry, man.
I was saying Microsoft just has this big like forgiveness barrier that they're working within, and I think that might be kind of crippling them in a sense that they live in this padded world where if things don't go well financially, it's like, well, that's just such a tiny point of a tiny segment of the entire corporation that it doesn't seem nearly as bad.
Yeah, I mean, a great example of that was Microsoft buys freaking Activision Blizzard for like what 70? I think it was 69 billion at the end.
Literally 69 billion. The meme number.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty
after
funny.
They bought ZeniMax too.
Yeah, they bought ZeniMax and freaking Activision Blizzard, one of the biggest of publisher combos in the world. And then Sony's like, we got you. We're gonna buy Bungie. It's like for like a couple billion, I think. But I mean, yeah, and you're right. Like Sony used to be huge. Sony used to have everything. Sony used to have like computer parts. They used to have a bunch of audio stuff, TVs. They used to be all over the place. And then I think about 10 years ago, they consolidated down to like a couple different industries. And gaming was a big part of it because that was one of the few profitable areas they had. So yeah, Sony's really reliant on making games work now.
With Microsoft's big acquisition, I never got the sense that it was ever about like giving good games to people. It was about them being the top dog.
It's big dick energy, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's only so many times you can buy a studio and then tank it and close it before eventually something has to give, And Microsoft probably hit that point.
You can't be
soon.
EA forever. People are getting a little sick of it.
People know.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, okay. Did you guys see that one article that came out maybe a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, where they had just closed the studio that did Hi-Fi Rush, and then Microsoft. Microsoft was like, we need more like mid-sized kind of indie-ish games rather than relying on these big studios. And it's like, well, what the fuck are you doing then? Like, it seems like they're big enough that they don't even know what they're doing.
Well, you so big the beat, they'd just be like, not like that, like it's someone else.
That was that strikes me as a particularly big blunder because it feels like that studio closure has dealt a lot more negative PR to them than like
keeping it
would be expected. Yeah, I think it's
and just
it's
having an underselling game. It would have been better
so.
than just.
I think so. Like I think that it had like a disproportionate effect of like making everybody go, huh. Kind of looking at Microsoft like,
why would I buy an Xbox?
Well, and then
exactly. I think it's because Hi-Fi Rush was just a well-beloved game. Like people, it's like it's a new game. It was Xbox exclusive, and people actually liked it. And they're like, how about we just destroy the studio? It's like, oh.
And an important part of the story is that there was some speculation that the game had done poorly due to Game Pass, and they had come out and said, no, by all our metrics, Hi-Fi Rush did well.
Yeah, they defended it.
Like, so you can succeed and still be shut down? Huh, okay.
That's how it was.
Good to know.
There's actually a clip of them asking one of the Microsoft executives if Tango Gameworks could do well and buy your own account, have a successful game, and you still close them, what does that mean for the rest of the companies under the Microsoft umbrella? There's like a really good clip of that.
Yeah, there's a cooling effect there.
Yeah, she was like, I don't know.
If I'm looking to buy a game box to play games, I don't. It fills me with a lot of hesitation when I look at like a general ecosystem for a game box, and it's really, it's really kind of shaky and weird, and they're firing companies, and they don't have any like flagship franchises. It makes me very hesitant to get on board, so to speak. And I think that you shouldn't underestimate that kind of attitude. That it just kind of puts people off from getting into the ecosystem if you're sending these signals. I don't want to hear that you're firing development teams. I want to hear that to make it, appealing to me as a potential consumer, that you're buying a lot of studios, that they're making a lot of games, that you have all sorts of stuff coming out, that you have all of these, all of these developers who are working for you, making stuff for you, that I know when I buy that box, it's going to have all sorts of games for many, many years, and I'm not going to regret it.
They're also they just announced that Call of Duty is going to be Game Pass first day.
That's the thing though. I think Activision Blizzard acquisition is probably going to change a lot about how, like, now that they've got that, Call of Duty, that's probably going to be a big focus for them now. What chance does Halo stand right with Call of Duty, like as the new thing that they can pitch is like, this is why you need Game Pass, is Call of Duty. Everything will be deferred to, Call of Duty.
Call of Duty's like naming convention, I think, is past parody now too. Like when of the reboot series of Black Ops or Modern Warfare, whatever.
Black Ops, like Cold War, like, oh wow, all right.
Yeah, it's just like I can't actually tell the difference between a real name and a made up name.
Modern Warfare 3, not to be confused with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3.
Hell, if this goes even deeper than the games themselves, it's like what are the names of the Xboxes that exist? If I want to buy an Xbox, well, it's
I think
what is that?
Series X and Series S.
Series S and X, and there's different variants of each. And
the Xbox naming convention has been a train wreck since the 360. I mean, it's like Xbox 360. It's like it's a box, but it's a circle, kind of. Okay, and then you had Xbox One. And people use Xbox One to refer to the original Xbox that came out before the Xbox 360, so it's just confusing. And then you have the Xbox Series. Like, what does Series even mean? Like, it's one console with one other variant that doesn't have the disc tray in it. So why are you calling it a Series? I don't understand. And then the leaks came out for, like, the new one that they're making, and it's a cylinder. It's like, pick a shape, guys. Like, what are you doing?
Like, I don't know. It just turns out the incrementing number tends to work out pretty well.
Yeah, PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's it.
Numbers are a top tier choice, but man, there are so many words in the English language that would be perfect to make an iconic console. Why did you do what you did, you fools?
I made the joke a few years ago. I made the joke a few years ago that they need to release the Xbox Series Enhanced X, the Xbox Sex.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Good. Yeah.
Remember, GameCube? What a console name for a console.
GameCube was great. It looked cool. It looked like a GameCube,
and
it had a little handle on the back that no one ever used.
By the way, talk about the lost art of video game console introductory screens.
Oh God, yeah, the goat.
Oh, the GameCube logo is one of the most brilliant designs I've ever seen.
It is brilliant. It is. It's excellent. It's so good.
There are memes of it now too, and it's just that good.
That's right. It's amazing. I love it, and it feels like that's kind of a lost art as well. We're starting to get much more boring. Because remember the original Xbox like introductory screen? That was kind of cool. It was like in that lab. You know what I'm talking about,
game
right?
box.
Does anyone remember? This is some super deep lore. I don't even know if people in chat will know. Maybe one person, but there was a reviewer back when YouTube started. I can't remember if he was like the angry reviewer, some bullshit, like one of those variations. He was reviewing the GameCube, and I can't remember if it went like that viral, but he had a clip where he was like, "The game disc is so stupid in GameCube. Looks like chocolate chip cookie." Like he was really, he was really mad.
Yeah, they had those. Yeah, that's right. They had those little discs. Yeah, little ones.
It was so funny.
Yeah.
It's actually sad because the GameCube was one of the least successful consoles for Nintendo, and the reason was actually because of the disc and the fact that all the big games were coming out with full DVD hard drive space or disk space, and you couldn't do I believe you couldn't do you could do memory cards in GameCube, but compared to the PS2 but compared to the PS2 Yeah, PS2 had bigger discs, therefore bigger games, and so it's hard to port things to the GameCube. Even though GameCube was more powerful than the PS2 hardware-wise, it was.
You could play DVDs on it too. Like, I mean, that was a huge
thing.
Yeah. Big deal.
I know that they basically did the small disc thing for piracy reasons, basically, because the small discs hold like 1.5 gigs, DVD holds 4.7. They're like, listen, small discs that are blank are very rare, so no one will pirate it.
Yeah, Nintendo's been really anal about that. They even did on the Wii. They did it so that the disc plays backwards, just so they'd make it more difficult to pirate. I'm like, come on, guys. So like, and so every single console would have. I think the Xbox 360 was going to do HD DVD, which that obviously didn't work out. But I think one of the big things about the PS3 was that it could play Blu-rays. I bought a PS3 to replace my also to double as a Blu-ray player. That was a great deal.
Yeah.
So
we didn't have a Blu-ray player at the time, so that's why I got it.
Well, I remember the PlayStation 3 was like a really good deal for a Blu-ray player back in the day. Like Blu-ray players were really expensive, but the PlayStation 3
they were like $1,000, weren't they? It was ridiculous.
Like PlayStation 3 was genuinely comparatively cheaper to get as like a Blu-ray player.
In comparison to Blu-ray players alone, it was a bargain to get a system that would play those and games as well. Yeah.
He called it the Nintendo shit cube, and the reviewer he was called the pissed off video gamer. That was his.
Oh my god! This sounds familiar now. Holy
shit! That's pretty funny.
Can we watch that? It's 10 minutes. His review.
Sure, do it.
Maybe after we get through this,
hold on.
We got to finish dinner first.
Yeah. Yeah, so should we get back to extra chromosomes here?
We have. This minute we've barely gotten a minute into.
maybe that should be the
inflation.
Well, it's worth saying that everything we've talked about is just the tip of the iceberg of how the industry has gradually over time desperately tried to make gaming, arguably like make our dollar worth less, so to speak. For what, like less bang for your buck in so many different ways. Some subtle, some overt, that got them in all kinds of trouble. Some stuff they got away with it because microtransactions would be a huge one, and I assume he's going to bring it up. And we'll probably talk more about it then. But a little history lesson for all you whippersnappers out there, from all us old people talking about how things used to be.
And here, if you want like a more direct comparison, so I'm doing the Suicide Squad thing right now for a video, and. Like, some of the skins in that game are just stupid. Like $10. Like, what the? You can go back to like I think it's Arkham City, and you get like a skin pack of like 10 skins for what, $2? Just the slow creeping of how much all this shit costs. Yeah, it shouldn't even be in the game, like at all.
I remember with map packs, it would be like back in the day when they started up, you'd be like, oh my god, 5 maps for X price, and then 4, and then 3, and then the price goes up, and you're like, oh, maybe it's a really good map. Like, hopefully it's a map they spent loads of time on. That's probably it.
And the peer pressure where you couldn't play with your friends anymore unless you bought those map packs, they really got you there.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Everyone's got to have a copy of it. Yeah.
I don't know how often they do that anymore, because I think a lot of companies were realizing, like, oh shit, like we're splitting our player base. We're splitting the groups of people who can play with each other. And people are just going to play the vanilla maps is all they're going to do. And they won't be able to play with all the people who buy the DLC stuff. Or we have to make the DLC really good, like Battlefield 1, for instance, which had banger DLCs with excellent maps. So
I think Free has a PTSD story to do with map pack splitting. Like one of those standard stories.
I'm always ready to hear Fringy's PTSD.
I'll remind him once he's returned from the ether, because I remember him. He's told it a few times because it's like it gave him serious trauma. I think it was like playing with friends, and then it was like a vote for a map, and he was like, "Don't vote for that one. I don't have it." And then everyone voted. It's like, no.
Oh my god, that sucks.
Bringing you back.
Yes. Are you telling the story of that time when I was in Modern Warfare 2? When
I was going to say, you tell it better because it happened to you.
So, you guys remember, Modern Warfare 2 had some map packs. I played a lot of Modern Warfare 2, but I didn't get the map packs. And I remember I was in this lobby, and this was back when you would actually meet randoms, like, in video games online and play with them for a bit.
Yeah,
like
the good days.
Other humans out in the wild.
And you would actually want to do that rather than instantly muting, because you don't want to talk to anybody. But
it was back in the day. It was cooler and more novel to be like, oh, there's like random people that I'm playing games with that I've never met before.
Yeah,
you know?
And we have a shared interest somewhat.
We grouped up and we're having a lot of fun. We played a few games, and then it popped up from the map pack, And there was also the option, and I was like, wait, I don't have the map, guys. Like, I can't play this one. Can we skip this one? And this was all falling on deaf ears as the countdown continued, and nobody was vetoing the map. And then it booted up the game, and I got kicked out automatically by the game because I didn't have the maps. And I was really sad about that. I was like, oh, damn it. I was having fun, and now I'm left out.
Terrible.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
Hello, you just listened to a segment of the podcast Every Frame a Pause, or EFAP. Hosted by YouTubers Mauler, Rags, and Fringy, and joined by a cycling variety of guests across the internet, they critically analyze media with exhaustive detail while pausing at every single frame. Subscribe to the EFAP channel and catch new episodes on Saturdays, as well as catch their smaller videos reacting to the latest and not-so-greatest movies and TV shows throughout the week. You can also subscribe here to EFAP Highlights for the latest shorts, clips, and supercuts, also uploaded throughout the week. Links to all the relevant channels can be found in the description section below, as well as links to their communities on Reddit and Discord. Thanks for watching.